Welcome to the Art of Dress. Today is a special day. It's a thank you video. And what I'd like to thank you for today is 500 subscribers. So I really appreciate it. And in honor of that, I would like to share with you elements of style. When we're talking about elements of style, we're talking about the ancient idea of the elements. We're talking about earth, water, air, and fire. So each of those elements has qualities that are a little different from the way that we look at the earth with science. Earth is anything that's solid, like rock, for example, is considered earth. Water is anything that's fluid, so mercury, for example, although it's a metal, it would be considered water. Air is anything that is permeable, like gas. And then fire not only incorporates the idea of the flame, but also the idea of the radiating warmth. So, starting with earth. So I've said about all earth styles that everyone wears a V neckline. And yes, that brings attention to the shoulder. It makes a strong shoulder. But there are three other things. Combine them into three categories. So the first one is that you get solidity because of the overlay of textures. You also can have a multiplicity of replication and layers that blur the boundaries. So let me show you some examples of what I'm talking about here. So here is Josephine Scriver, Refined Natural, and that is an earth style. And what you see here is the solidity that I'm mentioning that comes from the overlapping of textures. And the textures are something that you can actually really pay a little bit of attention to because there's so much going on. Look at her top, for example. You see there's all these little threads and there's the little stripe and how they vary. And this is the quality of earth texture that is often quite embedded in the fabric, but there's so much that if you start to notice, it's like, it's kind of like so much action. It reminds me a little bit of, say, an action movie where there's so much happening, things happening, and it's like, wake up. And that's the quality of this style. It awakens you because there's so much taking place. And so solidity that comes from overlapping textures. And then Rosie Huntington Whiteley is a refined dramatic. And she is demonstrating the kind of multiplicity of replication. And so here you have a pleat, and you have the pleat replicating itself over and over and over. But it's like multiplicity. It's not just like 5, it's like on and on and on. And so that is almost like a fairy tale where something starts changing. So you have to pay close attention because it's hard to know what's happening. There's so much happening. And the third aspect of an earth style is shown here by Frida Gustafsson, Refined Classic. And what you can see here in this picture is how the wearing of layers is actually blurring the boundaries so that your experience of an earth style is not sharply edged. It's a little blurry on the edges, but there's so much going on the inside. So I just should mention that every one of these aspects of an earth style can be worn by any earth style. So these are not like the wearing of layers is not specific to the Refined Classic. It's something worn across the style. So now we come to water styles. So a water style, I've already said in many of my videos that a horizontal boat neckline is something that introduces you in a way to a water style. So what else is going on? So first you have smooth transitions. In garments, for example, from the shoulder, the bodice to the sleeve, there is a seam, but it's very smoothly rendered. And secondly, you have shine that really enhances the surfaces of the fabrics. And you also have sleekness of silhouette. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So here we have Joan Small's True Gammon, a water style. And what you can see here is how there's this metamorphosis going on, this smooth transition from the bodice through the high-waisted focal point and into the skirt. There are divisions, but the divisions are very smoothly rendered. And so that quality of metamorphosis is like, it's like if you're having a dream and you have a flower that all of a sudden becomes a maiden and you don't see the transition, it just happens. And so that the smooth metamorphosis is like the dreamy quality. So the second aspect of water styles is shine. And notice how the shine pulls you to the surface and kind of mesmerizes you. It's back to that dream experience. And it really keeps you in a way in the moment. And then the third aspect is this sleekness of the silhouette. So it makes you think of an aquatic creature, like imagine dolphins that are so smooth, and this really sleek silhouette is another example. And again, all of these things can be worn by any water style. And did I mention this water style, Candace Swanepoel, the True Dramatic? So now we have set up the earth and the water, and what we have is a duality of the two aspects of the elements, or the two elements that are quite firm and kind of solid. And anytime you have a duality, you can ask yourself, is there a hidden trinity that resolves this? It's like a riddle. And yes, of course, the answer is yes. And we have the true classic Omega, open silhouette, L fanning. And here, the true classic Omega synthesizes earth and water styles. True classic of this type wear a very strong shoulder, and they show quite a solid solidity, and usually wear a V neckline, but they also have that sleekness and the shine and the smooth transformations of a water style. So this is the resolution to the first part of the elements. So the next element is air. And air begins the elements that are a lot less solid and more ephemeral. And the first thing that you already know about air styles is this wearing of this curved neckline that already brings you into this feeling of sort of relaxation. But there's more, of course, and the first one is textures, and the kind of texture that air styles wear is a texture that lifts off the surface. Their styles all have a kind of uncertain boundary, and that is what you see when the silhouette is a little indeterminate. And finally, design activity that actually creates a bit of movement. So here we have Anais Malley, Elaborate Gammon. And you can see the texture here that is buoyant. It kind of lifts itself off the surface. It takes your eye away from the surface. You start lifting off and floating with the texture. And then you have the uncertain boundaries modeled for us by Gigi Hadid, True Romantic. And you can see how there's not clarity here. There's really, it's as if, imagine yourself and it's in the summertime, and you're warm and you're just sitting outside, and you kind of just, things start to blur a little bit in terms of you don't really see clearly what's going on. You start to kind of fall asleep a bit because things are happening, but it's just very gentle. And that's your experience with an air style. So it's a very kind of sleepy, it's kind of a sleepy mood, I should say. And the third thing that happens is, here we have Arlena Sosa, and she's showing us, she's a true natural, and she's showing us how the design activity is actually creating this gentle movement. Because the movements are kind of like how air can't stay still. Air is always slightly moving. And that's the experience of an air style. So all of these aspects, the movement, the uncertain boundaries, the textures that lift off, these are all shared by all air styles. So our last style to look at is, our last quality of element of style is fire, the fire styles. And fire styles all share the halter neckline that starts out with a sort of a strong center, just like a flame has a strong center. As a definable center, you could say. And then so the inner focus of design activity comes from that, but there's also this radiating outward that sustains the design. The outer activity sustains it, sustains your design through radiation, and then a warm overall glow that comes from print and shine as well as the designs. So we'll start with Jordan Dunn, Elaborate Romantic, a fire style. And here you can clearly see the centering of the design through the halter neckline, and it's even more emphasized here with the slit, but it shows you how right that looks to have that center focus. And then next we have Micah Janelli, and she is Refined Gammon, a fire style, and she is demonstrating how the design radiates out from that center. The center is there, and it's certainly powerful, but the design radiates outward through the garment. And our third example of fire style is Yasmin Gowrie, Elaborate Classic. Here you see the centering taking place through the placket and through the strength at the collar and the buttons, but then it's sustained by this print and the shine, and it's going everywhere in the garment. And if you start looking at that, it's sort of like so much warmth and glow. It's like a meditative state, and truly it can take you into this sort of trance consciousness because you have this feeling. It takes you out of observation into just experience. And that is what a fire style does. It's the experience of this warm glow. So now we have our two elements of style that are less solid, and so it's another duality, air and fire. And you can say, is there a hidden trinity that resolves this? And of course, yes, the true classic alpha, that means fitted. And here showing you Leah Kebede. So Leah Kebede is a true classic alpha, I call it, fitted. And what you see here is, first of all, the texture. And the texture is very pronounced, but it also lifts off the surface. And secondly, you see this strong inner focus to the design. And you see also a lot going on, and there's like a radiating outward of design activity down the sleeve. And of course, that's enhanced by her focal point, her style focal point at her waist. And so it's so that is the experience of the true classic alpha. Thank you, Leah Kebede. So now you've looked at all four elements and how they relate to style. And you can start to think about how this relates to you, perhaps. And thank you again. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for coming. And I look forward to sharing more about style with you very soon. So take care.